You want to see something violent?
The rim.
And again. And again.
Looney gets it back to Wiggins.
And again.
Griffin. Incredible.
A dunk is the closest thing that we have to chaotic magic. Whenever a violent dunk takes place, you feel the goosebumps on your arms as the ground shakes, crowd goes crazy, the stadium erupts in complete pandemonium. You have men banging on their chest, and you have women shielding their kids from the craziness. It is pure, chaotic, and beautiful cinema. Today, we are exploring the humble beginnings and explosive renaissance of the dunk. Some of the stories and parallels that I found in my research honestly left me in complete shock and awe, and I can't wait to share it with you. Let's get started. It all starts in the first era. Joe Fortenberry, who played for the McPherson Globe Refiners, dunked the ball in 1936. First time ever in front of a audience, and it took place in no other location but Madison Square freaking Garden. Joe Fortenberry decided to make change and dunk for the first time ever. And as the audience erupted in Madison Square Garden, everybody was going crazy. Within the audience, there was this man. His name was Arthur J. Daly, sports journalist for the New York Times. And he wrote an article describing that dunk. The article was so well written, it won him a Pulitzer Prize in dunking. Now, you want to know the funny thing is? Arthur, I guess, was like a big boomer. Well, this is like before boomer time, but Arthur was, I guess, not aware of the phrase because the phrase was incorrect. You didn't dunk a roll into coffee. You dipped the roll into coffee. That was what people would say. Hey, you're gonna dip that cinnamon roll into coffee? Yes, I am. I'm gonna dip it. And let's all be very, very thankful for Arthur that he made this mistake. Can you imagine a world where instead of dunks, we call it dip? Oh, Anthony Edwards is driving in. Oh, he just dipped it all over Chet Holmgren. Oh my God. Yeah, no. Thank you, Arthur. Thank you. We appreciate you. He definitely deserved that Pulitzer Prize award. Thank you, Arthur. We appreciate you. But yeah, not long after Joe Fortenberry dunked the ball in 1944, you had Bob Kirtland, 7-foot center from Oklahoma A&M, dunking it for the first time in a college game. Now, the players that I mentioned impressed people by their ability to dunk the basketball, but dunking still had not reached the desired popularity, simply because a lot of these players who were dunking the ball were kind of one-dimensional players, and that was the case until the 1950s and 60s, where the two best players in the NBA at that time, Bill Russell and Wilt frickin' Chamberlain, fully implemented the dunk into their game. And that is what set the popularity of dunking to soar, just like dunkers did. And that led into what's known as the Renaissance of dunking. Now, of course, tall centers were the first people to discover dunking. I mean, it makes sense. They're the closest to the rim, right? But in the 1970s, we had a new breed of players, the freak athletes. You had dudes like David Thompson, who can dunk by the time he was already in high school, even though dunking was not allowed in high school basketball. I don't know why, don't ask me. But eventually though, in 1975, he was drafted by the Denver Nuggets, who played in the ABA league. Here's the thing, David was not just dunking on dudes, he was dunking on dudes while being 6'4". Now, it wasn't common at all for a player of his height to be able to dunk like that. The amount of air you needed to take off was out of this world, hence why his nickname was Skywalker. David Skywalker Thompson. By the way, that nickname was given to him his rookie season in 1975. Star Wars came out in 1976. The following year. Now, George Lucas never ever said that he came up with the name Skywalker because he watched David Thompson or Denver Nuggets. But factually, he was the first ever Skywalker. Before Luke, before Leia, before Anakin. And in my opinion, that's a pretty cool fact. Why was it so important that a dude like David Thompson, who was 6'4", was able to dunk? See, when a 7-footer dunks the ball, like we talked before, there's not much space between them and the basket. But when a smaller freak athlete dunks, there's usually a wider space between them and the rim. And that wide space, that air between them and the rim, that amount of space is a canvas where they were able to paint. And in 1976, the ABA hosted one of the most beautiful art shows ever known as the very first ever dunk contest. And the contestants were the following: artist A. Train Gilmore, George Iceman Gervin, Larry Special K. Kennan, David Skywalker Thompson, and This guy, you probably don't know who he is. He goes by the name of Julius Dr. J. Irving. Now, old heads like to talk a lot about like the game I watched was better. The players were so much better. Old heads watch basketball with rose-tinted, nostalgia-filled glasses and are typically wrong on almost every single thing they say about old school basketball. But one thing I will give them, one thing I will give these old heads is they came up with better nicknames than we did. Much better nicknames than what we did. Like, Gen Z's creative, man. And the fact that these dudes came up with better nicknames than us, man, we got to step up our nickname game up, man. What's wrong with y'all? But moving on, David Thompson was able for the first time to showcase to the world why he received the name Skywalker. By the way, David was also the smallest competitor in the whole competition, so he had a lot to prove and was definitely seen as an underdog. First dunk went very well. The second dunk went very well. And tragedy strikes as David missed his third dunk. And the fact that he missed his third dunk meant that unless he did something to essentially immortalize himself in the Dunk Hall of Fame, he was going to lose. So what did he do? Back against the wall, David Thompson gripped the basketball. And remember how I said the space between the player and the rim is a canvas? Well, David Thompson painted the freaking Mona Lisa. Dude did on live television the first ever seen public 360 dunk. That dunk should have won him the dunk contest, but the doctor had other plans in mind. Dr. J lined up across the court and started running at full speed, lifted off into the air like he was flying, and slammed the dunk home. Oh, and I forgot to mention this part, might be kind of important. He jumped from the free throw line. Slammed the ball in. The crowd blew up. He was able to secure and win the first ever dunk contest as millions of people around the world were watching. And if we zoom in a little closer, we get the United States. If we zoom in a little closer than that, we got North Carolina. If we zoom in a little bit more, we see this kid at his house, 17-year-old kid named Dominique, in complete awe when he saw David's dunk. He probably thought David deserved to win the dunk contest. And then just a few miles away in North Carolina, still, we have another house where we see another kid, 13-year-old kid named Michael, who was sitting there and watching Dr. J jumping from the free throw line, engraving it into his very heart. Dunking is an art, and your inspirations will carry you forward. A few years later, Dominique grew up to be Dominique Wilkins, who was drafted by the Atlanta Hawks in the 1982 draft, and Michael grew up to be Michael Jeffrey Jordan and was drafted in the 1984 draft by the Chicago Bulls.
The Chicago Bulls picked Michael Jordan of the University of North Carolina,
both being the third pick in their respective drafts. And yeah, man, they both entered the league that was filled with a bunch of Skywalkers and high-flying dunkers. But guess what? These two, they pushed the limits of what we thought was possible when it came to dunking. These two dudes ruled the skies. They were the two best dunkers in the NBA by a good amount. Plenty of lunch table discussions and arguments were had to determine who of the two was the better dunker. But guess what? In 1988, we finally get our answer. 1988 dunk contest is seen by most to be the greatest dunk contest of all time. Both Dominique and MJ, in their prime, participated in the dunk contest. And even though they were the two best dunkers in the NBA, their competition was very tough. You had dudes like Clyde the Glide Drexler, and trust me, that nickname was not given to him just because it rhymed. This dude would jump in the air and do his taxes before he even landed. And then you had Spud Webb. The man measured about 5 feet 6 inches. Chances are, most people watching this video are taller than Spud Webb. And you're probably thinking, they had a dude that was 5'6"? Oh, they must have had him as like a pity entry into the dunk contest. Why would you even have some dude that high into the dunk contest? Nah, he was legit. He won the dunk contest 2 years before that, so yeah, he was pretty legit actually. But even though the competition was really tough, Guess what? MJ and Dominique sliced through the competition like a hot knife on butter. Then there was just two, Dominique and MJ, ready to be crowned king of the skies. What did Dominique do? As he was going for his dunk, you might have mistaken his red Atlanta Hawk for an orange Denver Nuggets jersey. The Nuggets jerseys were orange back then. As Dominique performed a 360 dunk, very similar to David Thompson's dunk, but much smoother, a lot more finesse, and yet a lot more power and ferociousness at the same time than David Thompson's original dunk, showing how far humans have pushed this art form forward. And that dunk should have won him the dunk contest. But history is a cruel mistress. That dunk should have won 2 dunk contests already. But nope, it lost. But the chances of him winning the dunk contest fell as Jordan rose from the free throw line. Flashes of Julius Erving flying in the air. It was different though. MJ had his legs up higher, had his tongue out. He had a little bit of more swagger to that dunk. That dunk became so iconic that Jordan built a multi-billion-dollar industry after it. Jordan had given us the Jumpman. Dominique Wilkins' dunk was iconic. Jordan's dunk was of biblical proportions. Jordan won and was declared the best dunker in the NBA. Now, in my opinion, this is what I believe was the height of dunking, the peak of the art form. After this moment, I feel like dunking never ever reached those heights again, and I would love for you to join me in the next video where I go over the fall off of dunking. I hope you enjoy this. Leave a like and subscribe. Peace.